Hello everyone, Dave here again. Welcome to the finale of the Through the Ages series on the Rogue class. I can't remember if I mentioned this in the last video or not, but I did get quite a bit of feedback on the formatting for this Through the Ages series going forward. And I kind of like the idea of just grouping together, different editions kind of based off of time periods and similarities and things like that. So I kind of like the old school, then the 3.0, third edition era, and then like the modern or post third edition era. So that'll probably be the way that we do things going forward. Also, this video series, even though it's focused primarily on classes so far, it is meant to tackle different versions or different aspects of the game. I'm pretty sure. I hope I did because I remember recording it. I just don't know if I ended up uploading it or not. Due to, I don't know, maybe the video file may have gotten messed up or something, but I'm pretty sure I did upload like the history of like the magic missile spell as it sort of evolved and changed throughout some of the various editions of the D&D game. And I love to do things like the history of like the dragon's breath weapon, or like the history of like the beholder, sort of things along those lines. So there'll be polls coming up for that in the near future. And this is actually, for full disclosure, this is my second attempt at recording this video. I had recorded it a little while ago, and I just wasn't fully happy with the way that it turned out. And then we were hit with a week-long heat warning. So here in Nova Scotia, it is a humid province to begin with. But summer temperatures usually tend to be around like 25 to 27 degrees Celsius. You get a few days that might go above that. But this past week with the Humidex involved, and you do have to involve that because as a human being, you feel the humidity, how it affects the heat. We were getting days where it was 30 plus Celsius, and with the Humidex, it was upwards of like 38 degrees. I think one day, one of the first days of it, like the Humidex reached to like the feeling of 40 degrees. So for those that live in the States, a province that's normally used to, temperatures that probably be like in the the mid to high 80s for the summer. We were in the mid to high 90s, and a couple of times we even were above like 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's been rough. Like, we're still in it right now. Like, the warning is still in effect today, which is Sunday that I'm recording this, but it is better than it has been. And to help me get through the video here, we just have some nice, refreshing Nova Scotia well water, so that should get me through the recording of this video. Oh yeah, that's good. Okay, so we're looking at the Rogue class through the ages here. So we got the 4th edition version of the Rogue class, the 5.5, and the Pathfinder remastered versions. There are some other ones that we could look at, though I don't think they're necessarily different enough. That would be like the D&D Essentials Rogue, the 5.0, and the 2.0 version of Pathfinder 2nd edition. But truthfully, again, I don't think there's going to be enough major differences in their primary abilities, and I'd say that these are probably the more accessible versions of the class at this point. Plus, with the Essentials version, recording using the Pocket Editions is not the best if, I have another way to go. Like with the Pathfinder 1st edition, that's all I had, so I had to use that. Another note when it comes to the 4th edition and the Pathfinder 2nd edition version of the Rogue class is these two versions of the game are built around the concept of customization. So you're usually given plenty of options, but you only get to select like one or two of the different options at each, stage of your character's creation and leveling up. So the main focus of this is going to be their sneak attack feature as well as their skills selection and kind of how their skills work. So we'll go over like the things that the 4th edition and the Pathfinder 2e classes get. The 4th edition one will probably focus just on the 1st and 2nd level things, because that'll give you sort of an idea of how they function. We can go through the entirety of the D&D 5.5 version of the Rogue, and for the Pathfinder one, again, it's very customizable, so you can have multiple characters be the same class, but be completely different from one another. So we're going to go over essentially like their main like first level or low level abilities. And we might look at some of their higher level stuff, or might look at a couple of their like different feats throughout different like levels of progression to kind of see how that goes. But anyway, we're going to start with the 4th edition version here. So let's move these off to the side. All right, see if we can. Whoop, too far. All right, there we go. Just trying to zoom in just a little bit there. So here we got the 4th edition Player's Handbook. So this was for the Arcane Divine and Martial Heroes. We're not going to go into a ton of the 4E differences in this video. It's definitely something I could do in a separate video, though, if folks are interested in sort of like some of the major changes between, like, let's say 3rd edition and 4th edition, or even like which aspects of 4th edition inspired the rules in Pathfinder, or in not Pathfinder, but in D&D 5e. So we can sort of go through that as well. All right, so here we have our rogue class. So this is a martial character, so they are basically built around or dependent on like weapon attacks for like combat situations. Their key ability is strength, dexterity, or charisma. So dexterity being like sort of the primary one, but strength and charisma can both be important. There's an option, there's sort of like an aspect of the rogue that you take on that like one is based around strength and one is based around charisma. So whichever one of those ones that you choose, like that's the one you want is like your next highest level or next highest number for your attributes. They are proficient in cloth and leather armor. So in 4E it was like cloth, leather, chain, and plate. So there was a lot fewer categories. What proficiencies? Daggers, hand crossbows, shuriken, sling, and short swords. They gain a +2 bonus on their reflex defense. And then for hit points at level 1, they gain 12 plus their con score. And then whenever they gain a level, they gain 5 additional hit points. And for healing surges, which is your ability to heal in 4th edition, you get 6 per day plus your constitution modifier. For skills, they are automatically trained in stealth and thievery. And then from their class list below, you get to choose 4 more trained skills. So there's acrobatics, athletics, bluff, dungeoneering, insight, intimidate, perception, and streetwise. Stealth and thievery are listed down there because they are rogue class skills, but you're not going to choose them because you already have them automatically as proficiencies. And then we've got the 2 different rogue types here. So they do have suggestions for them, and we'll take a look sort of more at like what the major thing is here. But you can be like a brawny rogue, which is the one that looks at like strength as their secondary, like the next highest ability. And then there's the trickster rogue, and they just give you suggestions on like what feats to take, what skills you should select, which abilities you should select for your character creation here. And like these are sort of like a template for you to follow if you want. You're not required to by any stretch of the imagination. It's just like sort of a pointing you in the right direction based off of like if you want to make a character sort of depending on like these 2 roles here. The rogue class, they get the ability called First Strike. So at the start of an encounter, if you have combat advantage against any creatures that have not yet acted in that encounter. So basically, if you start a fight ordinarily, like both sides are aware of one another, so neither side would be considered like surprised. However, with the rogue character, they still treat somebody who hasn't acted yet as if they were basically surprised. In 3rd edition, the term would have been flat-footed, and by granting combat advantage or having combat advantage, it's just giving you a +2 bonus to hit. Flanking is another common way to get combat advantage, for example. So it's kind of cool that you have that automatically because that leads into your sneak attack ability as well. Then we got the rogue tactics here. So they operate in a variety of ways. Some rogues use a natural charm and cunning, trickery to deceive foes. Others rely on brute strength to overcome their enemies. So you choose one of the following 2 options, and then you're sort of locked in. However, some of your abilities, particularly like encounter and daily abilities, will have extra effects depending on which one of these that you chose. So there's Artful Dodger. So you gain a bonus to AC equal to your charisma modifier against opportunity attacks. And then there's Brutal Scoundrel. You gain a bonus to sneak attack damage equal to your strength modifier. The choice you make also provides... Okay, that's what I just said earlier. So, getting your strength bonus to sneak attack, again, like, you would fight usually with your dex. And the way that 4th edition has your abilities working is they would tell you which attribute you use for the attack roll, they would tell you which attribute to use for your damage, and typically with the rogue, everything is dex to hit and dex for your dex bonus for damage. So getting to add your strength bonus on top of all of that is also really good. And then you got your sneak attack, so this is once per round. When you have combat advantage against an enemy and you're using a weapon from the light blade, the crossbow, or the sling weapon group. An attack you make against that enemy deals extra damage if the attack hits. You decide whether to apply the extra damage after making the damage roll. So, for example, if you know that like you've been wailing on an enemy and it's pretty close to death, you may not want to burn your sneak attack necessarily right away, but if you have something that can target 2 enemies or whatever, you may choose which one of those 2 basically would apply to if you had combat advantage over both of them. So that's kind of where like that would come into play. So during the heroic tier, you get to add plus 2d6 to your sneak attack. At your paragon tier, which is levels 11 through 20, it's 3d6, and then at 21st through 30th, you are adding 5d6. So the sneak attack dice have come way down. In 3rd edition, they got up to 10d6 at level 19. You start like 1d6 at level 1, and then every 2 levels thereafter, or every other level thereafter, you gain an additional +1. So the numbers are they are lower. However, with the sneak attack in 4th edition, it's the same damage that your weapon normally does. So if you were to score a critical hit, which is a natural 20, and then the 20 plus your attack bonus equals or exceeds the target's armor class, you automatically get to deal max damage. And max damage is a bit more significant when you're adding extra d6s on there, because they would also be maxed. And then if you have magic weapons, they would typically, depending on the amount of like the plus, they might add extra dice on top of that. So a +1 basic magic weapon on a critical hit will add like an extra d6 that you would roll after you max out your normal weapon damage. So pretty cool ability to have there. Like, so they did scale it back, but I kind of prefer the way that they handle it here, and it is only once per round as well. So, you know, you're not getting it as often, but the rogues has some other things that they can definitely do here. So we got our at-wills now, and let's just see if I can zoom in a little bit more. All right, so we have for at-wills, you get to choose 2 of these. The first one we have is called Death Strike. So this is an at-will martial weapon ability. It's a standard action which can be made with a melee or ranged weapon. And for basically any requirements for like weapon attacks, if it's melee or ranged, it says you must be wielding crossbow, light blade, or sling. If it's ranged, then it would have to be like a crossbow or sling. And if it's a melee attack, generally like you have to have a light blade. So I'm not going to read at every single time because it does get a little bit redundant. But you target 1 creature, and then there's a special effect here that you can move 2 squares before the attack. You attack dexterity versus armor class. If you hit, it's one of the weapon dice, like 1 weapon die plus your dex modifier to damage, and a level 21. With all of these at-will abilities at level 21, you do get to add an extra die when you get into the epic levels there. So we got Piercing Strike. So this is a melee weapon only. So it says like you must be wielding a light blade. It targets 1 creature. The attack is dexterity versus reflex, and 1 weapon damage plus dexterity modifier for the damage there. So this is kind of just like your basic standard attack, and this is kind of your basic standard attack, but you do get to move around the battlefield a little bit if it helps you get into like a more advantageous position for something like a flank to get that combat advantage. Then there's Riposte Strike. So this is a at-will martial melee weapon ability. It targets 1 creature. It's dexterity versus armor class, and then is 1 weapon dice plus dexterity modifier for damage, If the target attacks you before the start of your next turn, you make your riposte against the target as an immediate interrupt, which is a strength versus armor class attack that deals 1 weapon dice plus strength modifier damage. So this is a good one to take if you were sort of like the more strength-based rogue with the, what do they call it there? I have like absolutely terrible memory for some of these things. For the brutal scoundrel. So yeah, that'd be a great one to have for that. So you get your normal attack, and then if they try to hit you back, then you get to hit them first. And then we got Sly Flourish. So this is a melee or ranged. It's 1 creature. Attack is dexterity versus armor class. And if you hit, it's 1 weapon dice plus your dexterity modifier plus your charisma modifier. So again, that'd be like the Artful Dodger style character there is one that you'd want to take for that. Was that the name of that they gave that, or am I completely wrong again? No, Artful Dodge. Okay, so those were the at-will abilities, and then we've got our encounter powers. So the first one we have here is Dazing Strike. So this is a melee weapon attack. It targets 1 creature, dex versus armor class. And you'll see like the encounter powers have a slight bump in their power, so they either will deal extra weapon dice or they'll have some other like effect that really debilitates the character or the enemy that you're hitting. So in this case, it's dexterity versus armor class, 1 weapon die plus dex modifier damage, and the target is dazed until the end of your turn. So I think with dazed, they can't do more than like a move action, if I recall correctly. I might be wrong, and that's been a long time since I've run 4th, but I know they basically like lose their next action. And then you got King's Castle, which is a standard action melee or ranged. Targets 1 creature, dexterity versus reflex, and it's 2 weapon dice plus dexterity modifier for damage. And then you have an effect after you make the attack. Switch places with a willing adjacent ally. So again, that can come in handy if you want to get the... Like, for example, if you're fighting in tight quarters and the rogue just was scouting ahead, so they're naturally up ahead, but the fighter really wants to get in to hit whatever you attacked, you can use this ability and then swap places with that fighter. Then there's Positioning Strike. So this is one of the ones that actually is different depending on if you took Artful Dodger or like the next one's for Brutal Scoundrel. So this is here we go, Positioning Strike. This is an encounter power. It is a melee weapon, 1 creature, dexterity versus will, and if you hit, it's 1 weapon dice plus dexterity modifier, and you slide the target 1 square. If you have Artful Dodger, you slide the target a number of squares equal to your charisma modifier. So with forced movement abilities, there's push, pull, and slide. So push means you have to move them directly away from you. Pull means you have to move them directly towards you, and then slide, you can move them however you wish. So again, you might hit somebody, and if you have the Artful Dodger, you might just slide them right into maybe an area that the wizard's about to hit with an AoE, or that you position it so that they get, into melee with the fighter, so the fighter can, take them out with their attack, sort of thing. So that's kind of the way that stuff like that works. And then we've got Torturous Strike. So this is a melee weapon. You must be wielding a light blade. 1 creature, dexterity versus armor class, 2 weapon dice plus dex modifier, and if you have the Brutal Scoundrel, you also get to add your strength modifier to that damage as well. Alright, and then we've got our daily abilities. So these are called exploits for the rogues. I think they're there's like spells for the wizard. I forget what the fighter's called. I don't know if they're like maneuvers or something like that. But the first one we have is Blinding Barrage. So this is a standard action. This is a Close Blast 3. I don't want to get too much into stuff like that, but basically, if it's close, like the blast, and then the number is like it's essentially like a 3 square, like a 3x3 square area of effect, right? So if it's close, that means you have to be bordering it. And then there's a burst ability. If it's close burst, then you have to be at the center of it, and then it radiates out from you. But basically, in 4th edition, everything's a square. So it makes it kind of easier to like draw on the battlefield and stuff like that. It's just easier to kind of figure out, because like in 3rd edition, you've got these templates for like cone attacks or fireball, but because like every second diagonal counts as 2 squares of movement, you've got situations where like the end of your 15-foot cone is jagged, right? Because there's certain squares that won't be affected by it based off of the diagonals that are involved in the situation. So I like the fact that it's just a square. It's so much easier just to be able to visualize and to deal with. All right, so you hit each enemy in the blast that you can see, so you don't have to worry about targeting friendly characters. It's Dexterity versus Armor class, and if you hit, it is 2 weapon dice plus Dexterity modifier damage, and the target is blinded until the end of your next turn. And if you miss, because with most daily abilities, even if you miss, they're going to give you something. So with this one, then if you miss, you deal half damage and the target is not blinded. The next ability is called Easy Target. So this is a melee or ranged ability. One creature, Dexterity versus Armor class. If you hit, it's 2 weapon dice plus Dexterity modifier damage, and the target is slowed and grants combat advantage to you, save ends both. And if you miss, you'll deal half damage, and the target grants combat advantage until the end of your next turn. So save ends in 4th is just essentially at the end of the creature's turn, if they're affected by something that a saving throw ends, they roll a d20, and if they get a 10 or above, then the effect is over. So it's kind of like a flat check in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, except there are things that can actually give you bonuses to saving throws in D&D 4th Edition. And then the final first level ability we have here is called Trick Strike. So this is a martial weapon ability. It's a martial ability, a weapon ability, and it's a melee or ranged weapon. So it's Dexterity versus Armor class. It affects 1 target, and if you hit, it's 3 weapon dice plus your Dexterity modifier to damage, and you slide the target 1 square. And then the effect is, until the end of the encounter, each time you hit the target, you slide it 1 square. So you always get to move the target around throughout the rest of the battle. And then we'll take a look at our utilities here as well, just sort of give you an idea of some of the stuff that they can do outside of like the combat and attack rules. And then that'll probably be it for this version of the Rogue. The main things that we wanted to look at was their skills and their sneak attack, and we'll recap that here in a moment. But the first utility exploit they have is called Fleeting Ghost. It is an at-will ability. It's a move action to do. The prerequisite is just you must be trained in stealth, which you automatically are as a rogue. The effect is you can move your speed and make a stealth check. You do not take the normal penalty for movement on this check. Then they have Great Leap. We'll just come back over here, this one here. And again, these are at-will abilities, so for utilities, these are actually really good. Because a lot of utilities are actually daily. So the fact that the rogue ones are at-will or possibly encounter is actually really, really good. So we got Great Leap. So it's also move action. You must be trained in athletics. You make a high jump or a long jump. Determine the DC of the athletics check as though you had a running start. The distance you can jump cannot exceed your speed. We got Master of Deceit. So this is a free action. The trigger for it is you roll a bluff check and dislike the result. You have to be trained in bluff, and then you get to re-roll the bluff check. You decide whether to make the re-roll before the DM announces a result. So if the DM's like, yeah, that's not going to work, then technically, like, you can't use the ability. It's one of those things that, like, if you have these types of abilities, you need to communicate that with the DM, because sometimes it's just second nature to be like, okay, well, that missed, or, like, that failed, just to be able to, like, move on to the next thing. And if you do that, and, you don't think it's right that, like, because he never got a chance to use his ability, then just let them use the ability, and just try to be mindful of it going forward. And then we got Quick Fingers. So you must be trained in thievery. Make a thievery check as part of this action, which is a minor action, even if the check is normally a standard action. So you can try to rob somebody like much faster. Then there's Tumble. So there you have to be trained in acrobatics. You can shift the number of squares equal to 1/2 your speed as a move action, so to avoid the attacks of opportunity. So that was the 4th edition Rogue. And yeah, so again, like the main things, they do get some good combat abilities, but the main things here for their skills, they get stealth and thievery automatically, and they get to choose 4 more from a list of acrobatics, athletics, bluff, dungeoneering, insight, intimidate, perception, and streetwise. And their sneak attack. Oh, I forgot the rogue weapon talent. At level 1, when you wield a shuriken, your weapon damage die increases by 1 size. When you wield a dagger, you get a +1 bonus on attack rolls. I forgot that one. I kind of skipped over to get to the sneak attack. So rogues are good with shurikens and daggers in this game. And then the sneak attack, again, is the dice is way lower than it was in 3rd edition. But they are part of, like, they are affected by critical hits and things like that. You just have to have combat advantage for it. So they, and it's only once per turn as well. So they kind of balance it out a little bit where, like in 3rd edition, you could reasonably, especially when you get to like level 19 or 20, you could very reasonably be doing like an extra 20 d6 worth of damage, and possibly even up to 30 d6, maybe even more if you're haste or something like that. So really cool to see. As far as the skills go, the 4th edition skill list was dropped way down. So if we take a look at the character sheet here, like this is it for the skills. So, you know, having 6 skills total is a pretty big chunk of what you have here. And there are certain things that just don't fit into like the rogue, abilities there, like heal, for example, or arcana, nature, things like that don't quite work. But when it comes to like stealth, for example, again, that used to be 2 skills in 3rd edition of hide and move silently. Perception is an amalgamation now of spot, listen, and search. And actually, I think... Oh, no, insight is there. Yeah, so there's 3 different skills rolled into that one. And then thievery is like pickpockets, open locks, and disable devices. So there's 3... 3, 6... so there's like 8 different skills that you would have had to take in 3rd edition that are now just 3 options that you can choose from on your list there. So they definitely did a better job of kind of balancing things out there. And I think there are feats that allow you to like take extra skill training, so you can become trained in skills that you're not normally trained in, so you get those options as well. So you can still gain more skills as you go on. But that is the 4th edition D&D Rogue. And now we've got the 5.5 version of the Rogue class. So this is the most current and up-to-date version of the Rogue for the Dungeons & Dragons game. So let's just see if we can find the... oh, that's a sorcerer, so we went just a little bit too far. But not overly far, because the Rogue is right here. So here is our Rogue class in D&D 5th edition. Or 5.5, whatever you want to call it, 5.24. I think 5.5 is kind of what they finally officially settled on. So here we've got the rogues. So their primary ability is dexterity. Their hit dice, because we are back to hit dice in 5th edition, is 1d8 per rogue level, which is maxed at level 1. And with a d8 in 5th edition, if you choose to take the fixed hit point total, it's actually 4.5 rounded up to 5 hit points. So basically, you're better off taking like the fixed hit points when it comes to like 5th edition D&D, because like you might roll a 6, 7, or 8, but you could also roll a 1, 2, 3, or 4. So you have more opportunities to roll under your fixed hit point total, or equal to or under, than you have to roll better. So taking the 5 fixed hit points is pretty good. There are saving throw proficiencies, so saving throws in 5th edition are based on your attribute, so each attribute has its own saving throw, and they are proficient in the dexterity and intelligence saving throws. So instead of like fortitude, reflex, and will, you now have like strength, dex, con, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saves. Skill proficiencies. You get to choose 4 from the list of acrobatics, athletics, deception, insight, intimidation, investigation, perception, persuasion, sleight of hand, or stealth. And I do believe that it's been a while since I looked through this, but I do believe your backgrounds also give you some skill trainings. Yeah. So skill proficiency. So you automatically get usually 2 skill proficiencies for your background as well. So let's just say that you chose like criminal. Right, you automatically get stealth and sleight of hand, so you don't actually need to worry about like taking it from this list. And for the tool proficiencies, I think if you get redundant tool proficiencies, you get to choose another tool set that you can also be proficient in. I'd have to look into that because it's been a while since I've also run 5th edition D&D. But yeah, so you do get 2 skills automatically for your background, so keep that in mind. You're still stuck at 4. The list, I think, in 5th is a little bit higher because, they brought like investigation and sort of stuff like that back. But overall, it's not a bad list, and you do get 4 plus the 2 that you get automatically for your background. So you're kind of similar to where you were with the 4th edition skills. Weapon proficiencies, they are proficient in simple and martial weapons that have the finesse or light weapon property. They are automatically proficient in thieves' tools as well as light armor. And then you have some starting equipment that you can make some decisions between, but we're not worried about that. Level 1 rogue features. So the first thing they get is expertise. So you gain expertise in 2 of your skill proficiencies of your choice. Sleight of hand and stealth are recommended if you have proficiency in them. At level 6, you gain expertise in 2 more skills of proficiencies of your choice. So what that does is it doubles your proficiency bonus. So at level 1, if you chose, your whatever 2 skills you chose, the proficiency bonus for them would be +4 rather than +2, which all your other skills would be. And then at 6th level, you get 4 out of 4 skills that you're proficient in. You're going to be able to double your proficiency bonus in, which is not bad. Sneak attack. You learn how to strike subtly and exploit a foe's distraction once per turn. You deal an extra 1d6 damage to one creature hit with an attack roll. If you have advantage on the roll and the attack, use the finesse or ranged weapon. The extra damages type is the same as the weapon's type. You don't need advantage on the attack roll if at least one of your allies is within 5 feet of the target. The ally does not have the incapacitated condition, and you don't have disadvantage on the attack roll. So if you're just making a normal attack and you have an ally that's there and they're equally capable of hitting the same enemy, then you automatically get to do your sneak attack if you hit. It doesn't grant you advantage on the roll, which is one of the things that you do need also or separately from having the ally within 5 feet. But, being able to get the sneak attack off just by having somebody else there and not need to be flanking or in a specific positioning is really good. The extra damage increases as your rogue gains levels. So basically we're back to the rogue starting at 1d6 and getting up to 10d6 at level 19. So it's the 3rd edition sneak attack dice progression once again. At level 1, they get Thieves' Cant. So you picked up various languages in the communities where you applied your roguish talents. You know Thieves' Cant and one other language of your choice, which you choose from the languages table on Chapter 2. And then you get Weapon Mastery. So your training with weapons allows you to use your mastery properties of 2 kinds of weapons of your choice in which you have proficiency. So I don't like the wording here because it's not 2 kinds of weapons, it's 2 weapons. So the example they give is daggers and short bows. So if you pick up a dagger, you pick up a short bow, if you chose that for your weapon mastery, then you get those properties. They may, for example, have the Vex property, which gives you advantage on your next attack roll against that target, or might have some other ability. But it's not a weapon group, it's not like a category. You don't get to choose light blades or finesse weapons or stuff like that. It's just specific individual weapon that you choose. So the wording here is a bit nebulous, but they do explain it properly here with them being specific weapons that you get to choose. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can change the kinds of weapons you choose. For example, you can switch to using the mastery properties of scimitars and short swords. So again, that's kind of the way that works. And they usually have some pretty decent abilities that they can put on there as well. All right, level 2, they get Cunning Action. So Cunning Action, you can think quickly quick thinking and agility allow you to move and act quickly. On your turn, you can take one of the following actions as a bonus action. So dash, disengage, or hide. At level 3, you choose your rogue subclass. We're not going to go through those. We'll take a look at what they are, but we're not going to go through all their abilities in this video. At level 3, you also get Steady Aim. So as a bonus action, you can give yourself advantage on your next attack roll on your current turn. You can use this feature only if you haven't moved during your turn, and after you use it, your speed is 0. However, that's a pretty decent ability because, again, you can just give yourself advantage by not moving. And once you get into melee, like hand-to-hand combat, you're probably not moving anyway, so that's not a bad ability to use. And again, that's a bonus action to be able to do that. So your bonus action would be to give you the advantage, and then you make your attack roll. Ability score improvement. So again, another thing I don't like the wording of. In this one, you gain the ability score improvement feat or another feat. I don't know why they just don't say at level 4 and then every 4 levels thereafter, because I think that's the way it works for this class. It should just be, the entry should just be level 4 feat, and it should just say that you gain a feat of your choice as long as you meet the prerequisites, and that's it. Right, that's all they had to do. I did, like, by basing it still off of the, you know, ability score improvement that you had in like the original 5th edition, being a separate ability altogether. It just makes it sound like I don't know, but it's ability score improvement is now a feat, and I much prefer the way that they handle that. So overall, a change for the better, but again, they really should have worded it better. And then level 5, you get Cunning Strike. So this is actually a pretty cool ability. Cunning Strike allows you to deduct D6s from your sneak attack pool in order to deal extra effects. Let's see. You developed ways to use your sneak attack. When you deal sneak attack damage, you can add one of the following Cunning Strikes, which is the number... Or sorry. Each effect has a die cost, which is the number of dice you remove from the... Or you forego from the attack damage dice. You remove the die before rolling, and the effect occurs immediately after the attack's damage is dealt. For example, if you add Poison Effect, remove 1d6 from the sneak attack's damage before rolling. If a Cunning Strike requires a saving throw, the DC is 8 plus your Dex modifier plus your proficiency bonus, which is pretty standard. So you can add Poison by removing 1d6 from your sneak attack pool. You add Toxin to your strike, forcing the target to make a Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, the target has the poison condition for 1 minute. At the end of each of its turns, it gets to repeat the save, and it ends if it succeeds on any of them. To use this effect, you must have a Poisoner's Kit on your person. And then there's Trip. So it costs 1d6. If the target is large or smaller, it must succeed on a dexterity saving throw or have the prone condition. And then you can also withdraw for a d6 as well. So you remove a d6 from the pool. Immediately after the attack, you move up to half your speed without provoking opportunity attacks. So keep in mind, though, if you did the steady aim in the same turn, it's not worth using the withdraw because your speed is 0 and half of 0 is still 0. And then you get Uncanny Dodge level 5. If an attacker that you can see hits you with an attack roll, you can take a reaction to have the attack's damage against you. So it's a little bit different from how Uncanny Dodge worked before, which just allowed you to keep your dexterity bonus to your armor class, so you wouldn't be like flat-footed or surprised very often. But here you can actually use it to like negate some of the damage that you take from an attack. So that can be a pretty useful ability as well. You also get level 7, you get Evasion, which allows you to dodge out of the way of dangers. If you're subjected to an effect that allows you to make a dexterity save to take half damage, you instead take no damage. If you succeeded on the saving throw and only half damage... whoops. Oh, and you take no damage if you succeed. Okay. And if you fail, you only take half damage. So it's kind of like Improved Evasion from 3rd edition. And you can't use this feature if you're incapacitated, which makes sense. At level 7, you get Reliable Talent, so whenever you make an ability check that uses a skill or tool proficiency, you can treat the roll of a d20 of a 9 or less as if it were a 10. So you're not going to get less than a 10 on any of those rolls. Improved Cunning Strike, so you can use up to 2 Cunning Strike effects when you deal sneak attack damage, paying the cost separately. So again, you could do the Trip and the Poison, or the Trip and the Withdraw, or the Poison or the Withdraw. And then at level 14, you get Devious Strike, so you get to actually add more to your pool here, more options. So you can do Daze, which is 2d6 that you take out of your target, or out of your sneak attack pool. The target must succeed on a Constitution saving throw, and on its next turn it can only do one of the following: move or take an action or bonus action. You can knock out for removing 6d6. The target must succeed on a Constitution saving throw, or it has the unconscious condition for 1 minute, or until it takes any damage. Before it takes any damage. The unconscious target repeats the save at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on a successful save. Then there's Obscure for 3d6, so you subtract 3d6 from your sneak attack pool. The target must succeed on a dexterity saving throw, or it has the blinded condition until the end of its next turn. Level 15 gets Slippery Mind, so you gain proficiency in Wisdom and Charisma saving throws, which is pretty good. Level 18 you gain Elusive, so you're so elusive that attackers rarely rarely gain the upper hand against you. No attack roll can have advantage against you unless you have the incapacitated condition. At level 19, you gain an Epic Boon, which is a whole other thing we'll talk about in a separate video. And then at level 20, you get Stroke of Luck. So you have Marvelous Knack for succeeding when you need to. If you roll a d20 test, you can turn the roll into a 20. Once you use this feature, you cannot use it again until you have rested for the day. So, or short or long rest, actually. So you can only just rest for an hour and be able to get that back. So that's pretty cool as well. Because in like situations, you might just be able to give yourself a critical hit. So that's really cool. So that's the main rogue class. So the subclasses were prestige classes in the previous version of the D&D game. So you have the Arcane Trickster, which is a spellcaster combined with the rogue character class. You've got the Assassin, and then you've got the Soul Knife, which is one of the psychic Sonic characters back in 3.0. Sonic started coming back though, which is really cool to see. And then there is the Thief class. You can also choose, which is sort of like the more typical one. Although again, they kind of depict the person as from like probably a Magic the Gathering setting, given the weird headgear there. So anyway, it's cool to see. So you got like again the base Thief there, and that is the 5th edition version of the Thief class. So skills are pretty similar. They get to choose 4, but their proficiency or the background automatically gives you 2. And you'd want to choose a background that gives you 2 skills that you would want to use. But overall, you're getting 6 skills total. And the sneak attack is back to the up to 10d6, but there's abilities that you can subtract dice from to gain the added effect, which is really cool. Or the fact that you're limited to only still being able to do it once per turn as opposed to like every single time that you hit is also a pretty big difference. So anyway, that is the 5.5 Rogue. And moving on to the final one for this series on the Rogue class, we've got the Pathfinder 2nd edition. So let's just find the Rogue character class in here. I feel like I've probably gone a bit too far. There's the Wizard. There's the Witch. There's our Rouge. Okay. So the Rogue class in Pathfinder 2nd edition, you don't have hit dice anymore. You simply have hit point totals. So at level 1, you gain 8 plus your Constitution modifier and hit points. And every time you gain a level, you add 8 plus your Con modifier again. So plus your Ancestry will also give you some hit points as well. So like a Dwarf might give you 8 to 10. An Elf might give you 6 hit points or something like that. So there's like you get extra hit points based on your Ancestry, but when you're leveling, it's always going to be the same, 8 plus your Con modifier. They are proficient in, or they're experts in Perception, which in Pathfinder 2nd edition, every class is proficient in the Perception skill. I was going to say prescription, Perception. And the reason for that is, number one, it's a very useful skill that gets used all the time. It's something that I think every character should have access to anyway. But it's also typically used to determine initiative. So it's your ability to sort of read the room or anticipate like attacks or something like that coming. Like you may see like the body language on somebody that you're speaking with is starting to like turn hostile, so you know they're getting ready to attack. So it kind of works like that, but you can use other skills, like a rogue, for example, that's trying to sneak around, might use stealth for their initiative instead of using the perception. So there's just kind of things like that. So like wizards in a mage duel, for example, might use Arcana for their initiative. There's all kinds of different things. If you can think of a reason why it would make sense to use a different skill, then by all means bring it up to the DM and or Game Master, and they'll be able to decide on it. For saving throws, we are back to our Fortitude, Reflex, and Will. They are trained in Fortitude. They are experts in Reflex and Will. So what trained and experts means is if you're trained in an ability, you get to add 2 plus your level to that, anything that involves that. So that could be armor class, that could be attack rolls, that could be spell DCs, spell attacks, like just things of that nature. If you are an expert, you get to add 4 plus your ability score modifier that's appropriate for the class. If you are a master, then it's 6 plus, and then if you are legendarily trained in something, it's 8 plus. If you're untrained, you're adding nothing, so you don't get any bonuses whatsoever. So again, you're always going to have some level of training for the saving throws. But yeah, so you're expert in Reflex and Will, and then you're trained in Fortitude. So Fortitude would be the weak link in this particular situation. For skills, they are trained in Stealth. Again, your background will also give you 2 skills, one of which is usually a lore skill, but you do get a skill that you are trained with automatically plus a lore skill. So I guess you can consider that to be 2 separate ones. And then you also get a skill or more depending on the Thief's Racket. So we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail going forward here. And then they also get to choose a number of additional skills to be proficient in equal to 7 plus their intelligence modifier. So there's a bit more skills in Pathfinder 2e compared to 4th edition or 5th edition. It's kind of closer to the 3rd edition list. But yeah, getting 7 plus your intelligence modifier is pretty sweet in this case. Your attacks are regular unarmed attacks or simple attacks. You are trained, as well as for martial weapons, you're also trained. For defenses, you are trained in light armor and unarmored defense, and you're always trained in your class DC for every class out there. Some might go beyond train, like you might get to expert or master, maybe even legendary, but every class is at least trained in their class DC. All right, so up next we got the Rogue's Racket. So this is sort of like the technique or approach that you have to the Thief class. And these will also affect your key attribute. So one of the things in Pathfinder is you do get a boost to your ability scores equal to, or it's a boost based off of whichever your primary ability is for your class as well. So you'll get some from your background, you'll get some from your ancestries, you'll also get some to finish your character off with, but you always get a boost in your class's primary ability score. So you should always have a +4 bonus in your primary attribute. I shouldn't say you should always, but you can always have a +4 bonus, which is the maximum you're allowed at level 1. So the first one we have here is Mastermind. So you rely on your intellect to craft intricate schemes and planning 10 steps ahead, where others might only plan 3 steps ahead, so you're still way ahead of them. You might be a driven detective, a spy master in the service of a powerful house, or an aspiring crime lord or information broker. If you successfully identify a creature using recall knowledge, that creature is off guard against your attacks until the start of your next turn. If you critically succeed, it's off guard for a minute. You're trained in society in one of the following skills: Arcana, Nature, Occultism, or Religion, and you choose Intelligence as your key attribute. You could also be a ruffian. You prefer the direct approach, strong arming, or intimidation. You might be an enforcer for organized crime, a highway bandit, or a noble who bullies others with threats of your family's power. You use whatever tools are available to get the job done. You can deal sneak attack damage with any weapon, not just the weapons listed in the sneak attack class feature, which is on the next page there. So you can do it with anything. And if you're using a simple weapon, you get to increase the damage die 1 step to a maximum of a D8, or a martial or advanced weapon with the damage die greater than up to no more than a D6. Critical hits you make with these weapons gain the weapon's critical specialization benefit, and you're trained in intimidation and medium armor. You can choose strength as your key attribute. When you gain light armor expertise, you also gain expert proficiency in medium armor. And when you gain light armor mastery, you also gain master proficiency in medium armor. So pretty cool there. Okay, and then there is Scoundrel. So you're fast talking, you use flattery, and you have a silver tongue to avoid danger and escape tricky situations. You might be a grifter or con artist, or you might use your skills in certain reputable professions like a barrister or a diplomat. When you successfully feint, the target is off guard against you. So feinting is not like passing out, it's F-E-I-N-T, not F-A-I-N-T. But if you do that, basically you're like trying to, get them to commit their defenses somewhere other than when you actually plan on striking. So you might get them thinking that you're going to hit them up high, but you actually go down low type of thing. So it just opens them up basically. Like in 3rd edition, would make them flat-footed. It would allow you to get your sneak attack off. It's basically the main reason you want to do that. So if you succeed on that check, the target is off guard against your melee attacks until the end of your next turn. And on a successful or critical success, the target is off guard against all melee attacks to the end of your next turn, not just yours. So all of your allies would also gain that benefit. If you feint while wielding an agile or finesse weapon, you can immediately step after the feint as a free action. So, again, if you have somebody that just keeps being able to position themselves out of combat, or like they move in, they attack, and they step back type of thing, like you'd be able to step and, do your actions there as well. So, again, a useful thing to have as far as that ability goes. Because, again, not everybody has attacks of opportunity in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. It's an ability that only a few character classes grant and only a few monsters have. So, having enemies like move in and then attack and move out is very much a thing that can happen in this version of the game. So, being able to, like, step, even if it just gets you, like, that much closer, or even if all they do is step away so that you have to burn, like, an action to do that, now you can do it as part of a free action when you feint them to also gain the advantage of being able to sneak attack them. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. You're trained in deception and diplomacy, and you can choose charisma as your key attribute. And then finally, we've got our thief, so nothing beats the thrill of taking something that belongs to somebody else. You might be a pickpocket working the streets, a cat burglar sneaking through windows, or even a consultant testing your client's vaults for openings. When a fight breaks out, you prefer swift, lightweight weapons, and you strike where it hurts. When you attack with finesse weapon or a finesse melee unarmed strike, you can add your dexterity modifier to the damage rolls instead of your strength modifier. So that's actually a big one. In 5e, if you're finesse, you can just do dex for both. But in like 3rd edition D&D, Pathfinder 1st edition, and Pathfinder 2nd edition, a finesse weapon lets you add your dex to the attack roll, but it's still normally your strength on the damage roll. But if you're a thief, you actually get to add your dex to the damage roll as well. And you're automatically trained in thievery. Our sneak attack ability, here we go. When your enemy can't properly defend itself, you take advantage and deal extra damage. If you strike a creature that has the off-guard condition, like, for example, if you feint them as a scoundrel or just feint them in general, or if you're flanking, that also gives them the off-guard condition as well. Gives you like a +2, or sorry, lowers their armor class by 2, I think is how that works now. But essentially, if they are off-guard, then your strikes deal extra damage. So, if you strike them with an agile or a finesse melee weapon, or an agile or finesse unarmed strike, or a ranged attack, or a ranged unarmed strike, which I don't quite know how you would pull that one off, you deal an extra d6 precision damage for a ranged attack with the thrown melee weapon. That makes sense, yeah. Still not an unarmed, though. That weapon must also be agile or finesse if you're using a throne. As your rogue level increases, so does the number of dice for your sneak attack. It increases by 1 die at level 5, 11, and 17, so it gets up to 4d6. And again, here's the thing with Pathfinder 2nd Edition. If you score a critical hit, which could be a natural 20 or any attack roll where your result is 10 or more above the target number that you needed. So if you got a 30 total, but you only need to hit armor class 20, that would also be a critical hit. Sneak attack damage also multiplies in this version of the game, so that would also all be doubled. So that's one thing to keep in mind there. Basically everything in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, I think, doubles. Then you get the surprise attack. You spring into combat faster than your foes can react. On the first round of combat, if you roll deception or stealth for initiative, creatures that haven't acted yet are off guard to you. We've seen that ability with the 5e rogue as well. Rogue feats, at first level and every even number thereafter, you gain a rogue class feat. Skill feats, you gain skill feats more often than others. At first level and every level thereafter, you gain a skill feat. Skill feats can be found in Chapter 4. Skill increase. You gain more skill increases than members of other classes. At second level and every level thereafter, you gain a skill increase. You can use this increase to either become trained in one skill you're untrained in, or become an expert in a skill that you're already trained in. At level 7, you can use the skill to increase to become a master instead of just an expert. And then at level 15, you can actually become legendarily trained as opposed to the master level. So that gets up to 8 plus your ability score modifier. Deny advantage at level 3 as well. So as someone who takes advantage of openings, you are careful not to leave such gaps yourself. You aren't off guard to hidden, undetected, or flanking creatures of your level or lower, or creatures of your level or lower using surprise attack. However, they can still get their allies to flank. And then, level 5, you gain expert proficiency in simple. So most of the other abilities here that we're gaining are just simply increases the proficiency level in different things, right? For example, weapon tricks, you become an expert in your simple weapons or martial weapons. Evasive reflexes, you become a master in the reflex defense. You get perception mastery at level 7. Weapon specialization, which adds an extra couple points of damage. And then if you get a critical hit with the weapon, you can use this critical specialization ability. Then we get debilitating strike at level 9. And there are feats as well that can also give you other options. But basically, when you take advantage of an opening, you both hinder and harm your foe. You gain the debilitating strike as a free action. The trigger for it is that a strike hits an off-guard creature and deals damage. Apply one of the following debilitations, which lasts until the end of your next turn. So the target could either take -10 penalty to their speed, or they can become enfeebled 1, which gives them a -1 penalty on everything strength related. So attack rolls, damage rolls, anything else that might revolve around strength as well. So that can be a pretty handy one to have as well. And again, as you can take feats which give you extra options to add to the debilitating strike as well. And then again, we just have things that increase our proficiency levels. We've got double debilitation, so at level 15, your opponent's attacks are particularly detrimental. When you use debilitating strike, you can apply 2 debilitation simultaneously, something that removes 1 removes both. Agile Mind, so that's your increase to your will. Master Strike at level 19, here's a cool one. You can incapacitate an unwary foe with a single strike. Your proficiency rank for your rogue class DC increases to Master, and you gain the Master Strike free action. So Master Strike, the trigger is your strike hits an off-guard creature and deals damage. The target attempts a fortitude save against your class DC and then becomes temporarily immune to the Master Strike for 1 day. If they succeed, the target is enfeebled 2 until the end of your next turn. If they critically succeed, they're unaffected. If they fail, the target is paralyzed for 4 rounds. And if they critically fail, the target is paralyzed for 4 rounds, knocked unconscious for 2 hours, or killed. So there you go. That's the main sort of class features for the rogue. And again, we do have some other things here. Like for the feats here, we got like Nimble Dodge. Requires that you're not encumbered. It's a reaction, so the trigger is a creature targets you with an attack, and you can see the attacker. You get a +2 circumstance bonus to the armor class against a triggering attack. So there's things that allow you to do that. There's Trap Finder. There's Twin Feint. So there's a few different things that you can do here. Some, again, are based on your racket, like the Brutal Beating requires a Ruffian racket. Your critical hit strikes your foe's shakes your foe's confidence. Whenever you strike a critical hit and it deals damage, the target is frightened 1. So you kind of get stuff like that they can use as well. And again, I don't want to go over everything that they have, just because it is kind of a lot. But again, there are things that you can do to get like different debilitations and things of that nature as well. I'm just trying to see if I can find. Yeah, so there's like Bloody Debilitation level 12, for example. So that caused them to bleed, and with some other potential nasty side effects as well. So yeah, there we go. That is the Rogue class in Pathfinder 2nd edition, the remastered version of the 5.5 and the fourth edition version of the character class. So yeah, we saw sneak attack go from the 10d6 that you get up to with every hit in 3rd edition to a much smaller number in 4th that you only get to apply once per round. Similar, you only get it once per turn in the 4th edition or 5th edition version of the game. In Pathfinder, I believe it applies to any attack, and again, like it does multiply on critical hits. And it's overall the rogue class has definitely undergone sort of an interesting metamorphosis from the days of the TSR era with BX 1st and 2nd edition, where like the rogue was kind of like well, you took it because number one, demi-humans could like progress in the rogue class almost all the time to unlimited number of levels, versus every other class where they are like strictly limited in what they could take. But you had like in Beckme, for example, basic expert, the rogue had a D4 for their hit dice. So like they were really soft and squishy, and their thief abilities were not great in terms of like the percentage chance for them to actually work. So it's kind of interesting to see them go from like those tables where they have the percent chances that go from, pretty much dreadfully awful to okay-ish to you can fully customize. So if there's only a couple that you really want to focus on, you can do that to be really good at them. To the skill system that 3rd edition introduced to, the refined version of that skill system where there are far fewer skills. And like with the Pathfinder Rogue, they gain a new skill increase every level after level 1. So, I mean, you're going to use some of those to become experts for sure. But again, if you find that there's a skill that's being called on quite a bit that you don't have, when you get to like level 2 or 3 or whatever, you get to choose that skill and you're just automatically, trained in it. Something that you don't normally get with all the other character classes. So I kind of like the way that they handle the skills and the sneak attack for the rogue in Pathfinder 2nd edition. Their opponent has to be off guard, which is a little bit trickier to do than like the 5e version where you just need somebody that's adjacent to the enemy as well. So I kind of like the way that they handled that, and I do like the 4e version of the class as well. The 5e one, the 5.5 one, the ability to like deduct your d6s from your dice pool for your sneak attack to deal like extra types of effects is pretty neat. I kind of like that ability. It reminds me of one of the versions of the Paladin class that could take amounts off of their lay on hands to like cure other afflictions. So yeah, overall, sort of an interesting progression for the character class. Let me know in the comments below. Have you played a rogue? And if you have, which version was it? Was it a thief or was it a rogue? And how did the thief abilities work for you if you did that? How often were you able to grant sneak attack? Like I know when I'm running 1st or 2nd edition, or even when I get the chance to run Beckme, I'm probably going to be pretty generous, especially Beckme, where I don't think the sneak attack ever goes beyond doubling. So I'm going to be pretty generous in allowing sneak attack to work, even if it's only once per combat per enemy type of thing. But yeah, I guess just let me know what your thoughts are on the rogue as it's progressed throughout the various editions of the Dungeons & Dragons game, and of course the Pathfinder game, which is very closely linked to the D&D property as well. So thank you all so very much for your time. I appreciate it. I will be putting up a new poll for the next subject, and we might take a break from the classes and just focus on a monster ability. Again, it might be just a singular ability that the monster has, like the Dragon's Breath weapon. I think might be an interesting one to sort of go over, or like how beholders have been handled in different versions of the D&D game. I'll try to come up with a few others as well to kind of see how like they've changed. I think I also did a version of like the Rust monster and how it's changed through the ages as well. So we've already done one of those, but it'd be kind of cool to see what some other monsters are that we can come up with. So I'll try to put that poll up sometime within the next couple of days. Anyway, thank you all so very much for your time. I truly appreciate it, and we will see you in the next one. Until then, take care.